So we finished finally all this connective tissue proper, and now we're going to move into the most typical examples of tissue that they don't look as much as tissue. They will be very strong or they will be almost fluid. And so we're going to start with the supporting connective tissue, and we are going to go to the semi-solid matrix of the cartilage, and we are going to start with this one, with the hyaline connective tissue. So here you see an schematic of a fetus, and if you remember, although your skeleton in the adult stages is mainly formed by bones, in embryonic stages, in the beginning you are going to have cartilage that later will be replaced by bones. However, it doesn't mean that all the cartilage disappear. You have cartilage in the septum of your nose, in different parts of your respiratory system that I will show you later. And you can also find in the covers that it covers the articular surface of bones. Okay, so independent of all, if it's in the early stages of development or in the adult, you're going to have this structure that I show you here. So you are going to find here your textbook want to show you three main regions. So the first one, you're going to have a lacoon. Here is the lacoon, the purple region. That inside of the lacoon, yeah, is the chondrocyte. So you can have two type of cells, yeah. So you have the cells that it could be the immature ones or the mature ones. The immature one, they will be the one that finish in blast, so they will be chondroblast. And the ones that are mature that finish inside, that it will be the chondrocytes. In addition to that, your textbook show you here that you have ground substance. And what else do you need? You need a fiber, and in this case will be collagen. So these are some of the major components that you will find in the hyaline cartilage. Yeah, and later we will cover more type of cartilage. Now, I wanted to tell you that the function of this structure, yeah, so if you touch your nose or if you see, later we will talk about the skeletal system and we will cover this. The function of this hyaline cartilage is that it's firm, but it still have a flexible support. Yeah, that is not, so it complement the function of the bones. So let's recap all this information that I just told you. So I will delete this very quick. Okay. And now the first thing that I told you is that this hyaline cartilage is the most abundant type of cartilage. And it has the following major components. It has immature chondroblasts, as I told you, has mature chondrocytes, remember the endings, and it will have collagen fiber. And also it will have ground substance, yeah, but remember it will depending on the proportion how solid it is. The location, I told you that it will be in the articular surface of bones and it will be covering them. It will be in the nasal septum and in different parts of the respiratory system like the larynx, tracheal, and bronchial rings. And the function I told you that is complementing the bones function. So these ones are, although are firm, they provide some flexible support. This is why they are in the articulation, in the articular surface of bones. So here you have the sectional view of a hyaline cartilage of a developing fetal bone. And you have different sections here that you in this picture. Remember that all of these one are light microscopic pictures, one at 200 magnification and the other one at 400. And so here, the first thing that your textbook wanted that you observe is that this region here, if you try to look for the lacoon that we were talking before, you don't find it there. Why? Because here you have its perichondrium. Peri, if you remember, is around, and chondrium is mean cartilage. Okay, so you here what you have is a type of connective tissue that is surrounding, that is around the cartilage. Okay, and the next component that we were talking in the previous slide is this lacune, and there you see not only um, the lacune, you can see also the nucleus of the chondrocyte. Okay, so remember, is the space, lacune is the space where the chondrocyte is going to be located. And finally, the last section will be the ground substance that is surrounding all these different lacune and chondrocytes. Okay, so now let's move to the next section. We just finished the first type of cartilage that we were going to study, that is the cartilage. And now we're going to move into the second one, that is the fibrocartilage. So just looking at the name, you see that there are two components. Yeah, so you have a cartilage, and this cartilage have fibers. Yeah, so just assuming that, just from the name, you think about this is similar to the hyaline, but has extra fibers. Okay, and this is the perfect definition of this type of connective tissue. And when you see the picture, you say, yes, here you see many fibers. Yeah, and this is the first thing that they wanted to show you here, that you have collagen fibers that are located in the ground substance. You see here again something similar now than the hyaline. So you find the nucleus of the chondrocytes, and you find here the chondrocytes, and surrounding that you find the lacune. Yeah, the lacune here, the lacune here. Yeah, and remember here you have only one chondrocyte. You can have three or more. They just have to be located in that space that is the lacune. And now the question that you have, okay, why we have so much collagen? Yeah, much more collagen than the hyaline, which is extra collagen. And the reason is because it need to be a tissue that it need to be not as strong as the bones, but it need to have more support than the hyaline connective tissue for shock absorption. And here they offer you a wonderful example, that is that between vertebrae you have this intervertebral disc. So here, so you need to have some more flexibility than the bones, but it needs to be stronger. Yeah, yeah, they have give more support than the hyaline connective tissue for shock absorption. So, okay, now let's just recap. I told you that the this type of connective tissue has similar features as the hyaline cartilage. The difference is that here we have more collagen fibers for strength. In addition, I told you that there are different locations, and I talk about the intervertebral disc, but later um, um, in following chapters, we will talk about, for example, the symphysis in the pubic or the knee, that you need to definitely have more support. Finally, the function here, as I said before, you need more support, for example, in the vertebra than the hyaline. And why? Because you need shock absorption. So, for example, in your knees, you need definitely more a strong cartilage there protecting your knees so you don't get injured. Now I'm going to show you the light microscopy picture that your textbook generally show you. So here, if you just the appearance to me of this light microscopy picture that you have one at 200 and the other one at 400, it's like you have the hyaline connective tissue, yeah, that it has the chondrocytes, the lacune, and all the things that we see, and you have also dense connective tissue, dense connective tissue, where you have all these collagen fibers. Yeah, um, you add those together and you get this uh, fiber cartilage. And I'm not saying that this is how it's made. I'm just saying that the appearance is like the combination of both. Yeah, so let's go through that, and so it's easier to explain. So here you see all this nucleus of the chondrocytes. So here you see an example. They are just easier to see at 400, although you can see it here and here in the 200 magnification picture. You can also see the lacunes. So here in white, you see very clear the lacunes. Yeah, and you can keep seeing it everywhere. Also, even in the 200, although you need to make a higher effort. Uh, you can see in both the collagen fibers. So here, similar to the dense connective tissue, you see reddish area, and you can see it everywhere. No, all these areas have collagen, and most of that is collagen fibers. Um, and and those are the key structures that are there. This one we already showed you before. And yeah, that's all that we need to remember from the fiber cartilage. Remember, it's not that they have that you combine both. No, is but they look both like other tissues that look at properties of the hyaline connective tissue and had a lot of collagen. So it has it looks similar to our two pictures that we studied before. So similar to the dense connective tissue that you have a elastic form, here you're going to have in the cartilage version, not only one that have a lot of fibers, but other one that have more fibers that are very elastic. And this is the last example of connective tissue, cartilage connective tissue. So here you can see that in the auricle, in the external part of your ear, if you compare your septum of your nose and your ear, you notice that definitely is more flexible. So you're going to have a very similar structure that the hyaline connective tissue, but instead of having collagen fibers that make it stronger, you're going to have elastic fibers that they make it more flexible. But if you see the picture, you see that the schematic here is the same structure. So let's go on, let's walk you through the same structure that we have talked before. So here we told you that a connective tissue that, sorry, that the cartilage is always surrounded by connective tissue. So here in that red region that I highlight or that I outline, there is no chondrocytes. Yeah, you just see fibers, ground substance, and there we don't see any cells, but this is the perichondrium that we talked before. Number two, here you find the nucleus of the chondrocytes. And number three, these are the elastic fibers. So instead of having a lot of collagen fibers, as I said, they have elastic fibers that they will make it more flexible than the hyaline, and they are very useful for support. Finally, we have been talking that in the chondrocytes always are in a place called lacuna that is the space where the chondrocyte is going to be located. Okay, so let's summarize this last type of cartilage, that is the elastic cartilage, and um, have the same features of the hyaline, but in this case you have extra elastic fibers for stretching. And the location, I already told you at the external ear in this example, but you can find it in other places like the epiglottis, and you will hear that the auditory tube. Later at the end of the semester, we will talk about this. Finally, the function, we already said that it gives more flexibility, it's more flexible than the hyaline connective tissue and provides support. Okay, now let's look at the picture, the light microscopy picture that your textbook offer. So here, I think that things are much easier now. So they are the same pattern that we have talked before. So here you have the elastic cartilage of the external part of your ear. And here, for example, in the both 400 magnification or 640 magnification, you see the same thing. So here you see here the lagoon that is surrounding the chondrocytes. Here you see, of course, the nucleus here and here, and the same thing will happen if you see it in the light microscopy. Chondrocytes, nucleus, yeah, the lagoon surrounding them. And besides that, you see all these branches of blue, like tree mesh. Those one, in both cases, it will be the elastic fiber. So remember, you have the lagoon here, the elastic fibers, the nucleus chondrocyte, and all these different structures that are very different, easy to differentiate right now. So with this, we finish the last type of cartilage. Now I'm going to give you a little summary and then go into the other type of supported connective tissue that are the bones. So we finished the first type of supported connective tissue, that is the cartilage, and we know that the most common is the hyaline, yeah, the hyaline connective tissue, and then you have two variations, one that have a higher number of collagen, that it can be found in parts that you need more support, yeah, that it could be the interdisc of the vertebra, or other ones that you have more fibers, but these will be more elastic fibers. And this will be located, for example, in the external region of your ear. Yeah, and you might find all these are just variation of the highly connected tissue that is the most common. Okay, so I'm sure that now this is pretty easy, and when you go to the lab, you will be able to identify all these regions. Now we're going to move into the bone, that is just solid matrix, it's not semi-solid. And here, this will be just an introduction. Then there will be an entire chapter where we talk about all these structures in much more detail. To start talking about the bone tissue, I'm going to give you some introductory terminology. This is a fascinating tissue that is highly specialized, so there is many new terms. So I'm going to give you just few new words that you need to remember so you can understand the other section. Again, we are going to have an entire class talking about this, so don't feel overwhelmed with all this information. We are going to cover it later in more detail. So the first thing that I have to tell you is that surrounding the bones, you have this structure called periosteum. Peri, surround osteum bones, and is mainly connective tissue. So it's here, all this layer here that is found here. Then you have, if you see this, is a type of bone called compact bone. And here you have the spongy bone, yeah? Now let's talk about some of the structures that you can find in the compact bone. So the unit, this structural and functional unit of the compact bone is called an osteon. So here you see in this picture all these circles, yeah, that have inside, they have concentric circles, yeah, all of them are the unit, the structural unit. And here they zoom in for you and they show the osteon. Okay, and so what is the osteon? The osteon is the structural and functional unit of a compact bones. Is consisting of concentric bone layers and is responsible for the strength of the bone, the influx of nutrients, and the removal of waste. Okay, so we are going through different layers of hierarchy. So the biggest one, from a very general perspective, you have compact bone. Then in the next layer, you will have the compact bone is formed by osteons. And now we're going to see the different layers, or sorry, the different components of an osteon. So here, the first component is the lamella. So you see all these concentric lamella. And what is a lamella? A lamella is an specialized extracellular membrane around the cells that has been calcified. Yeah, has a calcified matrix, and this allows the bones to have this hardness and rigidity. Okay, and there you are storing calcium. Okay, so first lamella. So let's put here A2A lamella. And what else do you have there? So you have there, here they even zoom in even a little bit more to show you in more detail. You have three things here: canaliculi, osteocytes, and lacuna. So lacuna, we already talked about that, is the space that is located where the chondrocyte is going to grow. Here you have, instead of the chondrocyte, you have the osteocyte. That is the mature cell of the bones. And here, do you remember that I told you that the bones have a very rigid structure, but they are alive. So they need to have ways to exchange um, nutrients and remove the waste. And to that, they have these tiny canals. Here you see it here, here. These tiny canals called canaliculi. Let's put 2B. So tiny canals that connect all the lacunes supply nutrients. Okay, so that is another structure. Another structure that is important that I told you is the central canal. And here you can see, let me try to remove some of these things so it's not too confusing for you. But the last structure is the central canal that I hope that you can find very easily. Here you see a central canal here. Here, yeah, you see it central canal. Here you see another central canal. So is located in the middle of the osteon, yeah, and it's surrounded by the concentric lamella that is the specialized ECM that has been calcified. And there, in the middle, you will find three things: nerves, yeah, veins, and arteries. Okay, with this information, I know it is very basic. We can keep talking about the different sections of the bone. So here you can see one of the most famous bone, that is the femur. So your textbook now I want to show you a picture of several osteons of the femur. And here you can see, here there is many central canals. Here there is another one. Okay, here's another one. Here there is another one here. Yeah, and you find concentric layers. Yeah, and we just talked in the previous slide about that. So here you can see how they look more clear. Of course, it's much easier when you magnify 400 times this. And you know that these are osteons, that osteons are the structural and functional units of compact bones. And here you have many components. So for example, again, central canal, that here the veins are arteries and nerves are there. The bone lacuna, that is the space between the extracellular membrane, yeah, that is the extracellular matrix. The ACM, the bone lamella, that is the specialized extracellular matrix that has been calcified, and of course the bone canaliculi that is responsible for the influx and the influx of nutrients and the removal of waste products. Okay, so I know it is not completely clear from this picture, but in the lab it will be much clearer. And later when we study all this tissue in an entire class, I think it will be much easier to see. So just remember that the compact bones are in charge of the support, protection, and of course calcium storage, as there is so much calcium to calcify to solidify the bones. So there is a lot of calcium there. And in future chapters, we will show you how bones are repaired and how can you remove all the calcium from there. Um, the location of this compact bone, it will be the outer layer bones, the outer layer of bones. So if you remember, if this is a section of a bone, you will have here the periosteum, yeah, that is connective tissue, and later, let's put it in yellow. Oh, okay, let me see if I can put it here with a different color. Where is, here it is, sorry. Here you will have the compact bones, and inside of that you will have the spongy bone, and inside of that you might have the bone marrow. So this one is only an outer layer of bones, yeah, the compact bone. Um, Now, more features of these compact bones are there are dense tissues, as you can see, yeah, they are not only they have a lot of structures in a very small region, yeah, there is no space between them, and you have two type of cells. If you remember the osteocytes and the osteoblasts, the osteoblasts will be in the surface when you can find where it's required to build new bones, and we will talk about that uh, in more detail in the chapter later in future classes. And on the other hand, you find mature osteocytes, so the adult bone cell type that it get trapped where you can find this hard matrix uh, of the osteons that we showed there today. Finally, in the bones, you have this structure that we also talk a lot, that is the canaliculi. And in the canaliculi here, you are in charge of exchanging nutrients and removal of waste. Okay, so with this, we finish the compact bone. And now we're going to move into the other type of bone, that is the spongy bone. So let's recap. I told you that there was something called compact bone, and there was another one called spongy bone. They have other names. So, for example, the spongy bone can be also called here, if you see it, a cancellous, yeah, or tabernacular bone. And the compact bone can be also called cortical bone. Yeah, they have different names. But the most important part is that, as we said before, the compact bone is in the outer layer while the spongy bone is inside. Okay, the compact bone is heavy, tough, and compact in nature, while the other one, it look like an inner that have inner pores. Okay, now I'm going to go on, and now that you remember the spongy and the compact bone, now I'm going to give you more details about the structures of bones. Now I'm going to talk about the spongy bone and the compact bone again, but now I'm going to give you more information. So the spongy bone, in addition to be inside uh, of the bone, yeah, here it is located in the epiphysis, yeah. So when you have long bones here on the top of the bone, you will find the compact bone, as I have been showing you, and also the spongy bone. That here is the red bone marrow. That this is where all the blood cells come from, yeah. So the blood cells come from here. So this red bone marrow is constantly displaying mitosis of all those early stages of cells. And on the other hand, in the middle of the bone, you have another section that is called the diaphysis. And here, if you go and zoom into this diaphysis, you find the compact bone, but instead of the spongy bone, you find a yellow marrow. This yellow marrow is a section of the bone that instead of having active mitosis is a storage of nutrients like fat, like different lipids. So now let's move into, I will show you a picture of the spongy bone. Here you can see the picture of a spongy bone, and now it makes more sense why it's called like that, because it looks like a sponge. Now I'm going to give you just key points that you need to remember. So remember that this spongy bone is formed by uh, bony spikes of both osteocytes and matrix. And in the open area, you have this important red bone marrow that is very important for the blood cell production. I told you that the location is inside component, in the inner component of the bones, and in particular in the epiphysis. And I told you that in addition to support, is very important for the production of blood cells. Okay, so we are done with this section. Now we will move into a different type of connective tissue. So we finished with the supportive connective tissue. Yeah, the tissue that it looks like a rock to some degree, so it can be solid matrix or semi-solid matrix. And here we finished talking about two type of bones. Yeah, that is the compact bone. Yeah, that is located in the outer layer. And if you remember, we talked also about the spongy bone that is located inside, and they have different characteristics and different structures. Now we're going to move into the last type of connective tissue, that is the fluid connective tissue, and we're going to talk about the blood and, of course, the lymph. Okay, so let's start. So here you can see the different blood vessels, and here inside of that you can see a light microscopy picture of your blood. And here uh, this light microscopy picture show us different type of materials, and some of those will be blood. Sorry, some of them will be cells. Some of them will be ground substance, and some of them will be fibers. Because if you remember, these are the three structures of the or three components of the connective tissue. So here you can see first cell, white blood cells, charge of fighting diseases, yeah, the immune response, platelets or thrombocytes that are in charge of the clotting process. So when you have an injury, the body can repair and you don't lose all their blood or your blood. Third one, these erythrocytes or red blood cells that are very important to transport the oxygen, and they have hemoglobin. So hemoglobin, and they here. So I gave you three cell types. Okay, so let me try to write it. Three cell types, and there are many more. But right now, with this is the basis. Here, here is the ground substance will be the blood plasma. Yeah, so here you can see it. Blood plasma that is around all those cells, and um, is the liquid fraction of the blood. Okay, so cells, ground substance, and finally the fibers that we cannot see here are the clotting factors. So they are proteins that are in charge of making sure that if there is an injury, you can repair them with the thrombocytes. So those work together. So just to recap, I told you that the whole blood contains these three components of the connective tissue, and I give you three examples of blood cells. There are more. There are also non-form elements. The second one is the ground substance, that in this case is the blood plasma, that is the liquid fraction of the blood, and finally the protein fibers that are called clotting fibers. I also told you that the location of the blood is in the, of course, the blood vessels, and in addition in the heart. And I also told you that the functions of each one of these cell types, so the red blood cells are in charge of transport oxygen and CO2, the white blood cells are in charge of the immune response, the platelets or thrombocytes plus the clotting factors are helping in the blood clotting process, and finally the plasma, the blood plasma, is in charge of the transport, moving all these structures, all those cells, from one region to another one. Now let's move into the last type of tissue, the lymphatic system. Now we are going to talk about the lymphatic system, and again, highly recommended to watch the crash course if you want to know more about this, or reading about or reading the chapter of your textbook. This will be in the other semester. And here I'm just going to give you some information from the crash course that I thought that it was very useful as an introduction to understand what is the lymphatic system. Why? Because the lymphatic system, we talk about the digestive system, we talk about the respiratory system, but hardly ever we hear about this lymphatic system. So I'm just going to make an analogy that I found very useful to understand what is the lymphatic system. Imagine that you're traveling the airport and there's people moving everywhere and you're waiting in line to go through security. You, in those security checks, you cannot go, they try to move everybody really fast, yeah? Yeah, and however, some time to time there are random checkups. So randomly they pick somebody that they go and do a thorough checkup. Same thing happened with our blood. You know, there are so many blood cells that are moving in the blood, and you cannot stop them from moving. Yeah, you cannot check them very well. What you do is random checkups, and when you do, the system that is involved in doing those random checkups is the lymphatic system. Okay, so that is the function of the lymphatic system. And now I'm going to show you how it happened. So generally, so here in our body, we're moving around 20 liters of blood. However, here you can see a capillary. So the blood that goes with the nutrients and the oxygen then need to come back with the waste products and CO2, and if these changes happen in the capillaries, and in the capillaries, you with osmotic pressures, most of the products, most of the blood moves, and it come back to be filtered to the kidneys, and then you know there is a circulation around all the body. However, yeah, this perfect recycle of blood is, it has a small problem, that is that you lose 3 liters of fluid, yeah. So you only are able to achieve 17 liter. There are 3 liters that are like tiny vacuums that absorb it, yeah. And those tiny vacuums that absorb that is the lymphatic system, and they absorb it and check that everything is okay. You know, there is immune cells there, so they absorb it, check that everything is okay, and put it back later in the 3 extra liters and the 17 liters. Then they meet again and they become into 20 liters, and in that way you the body come back, don't lose all this fluid, yeah, this 3 liters of fluid, and at the same time is able to check that there is nothing wrong in the blood. So to complement the ideas of the previous slide, here I have this schematic that show you that the lymphatic system has many different components. So there are different body organs like the bone marrow. So to do all those checkups, you need the immune system, and the blood cells are produced in the bone marrow. You need different organs like the thymus, the spleen, the lymph nodes, and if you remember, in the lymph nodes you're going to have reticular fibers that are going to the connective tissue, that allow you to filter all the blood. And so, in conclusion, the lymphatic system is a group of organs, yeah, like the appendix, the spleen, the thymus, vessels, and tissues, as I showed you in the previous slide, that protect your body from infection using all these immune cells and allow to keep a healthy balance of fluids. Yeah, so if you lose these 3 liters, it will be of fluids in your body, it will be really bad. And so the lymphatic system is transporting this fluid that it gets from the blood, and the idea that it's going to put it back later. The location of the lymphatic system, as I said, there are so many places. So you have organs like the spleen, but also you have lymph nodes and you have lymphatic vessels, as we saw last time in the previous slide. And the function, uh, as I said, you're going to transport excess of fluids from the blood. You're going to check it up that there is nothing wrong, and you're going to put it back into the systemic venous blood. Okay, so with that we finish our last connective tissue, and now I'm going to give you a quick summary of this, and we're done for today. Okay, so I know that this looks super complicated, so I tried to organize it as much as possible. You can keep the slides, rewatch the video if you have any question, and your textbook is a great source of information. Okay, so we finally finished. This was a very long class, and when we talk about the location and function of different type of connective tissues, yeah, so we talk about tissues that maybe you never hear, like the eye roller connective tissue, or tissues that you never hear, but you hear, like for example, you never hear about the dense, regular or irregular connective tissue, but I'm sure that you have heard about ligaments and tendons. And we talk also about tissues that they are very weird, like the blood and the compact bones and lymphatic system. And I told you that the connective tissue has 3 main components, if you remember: cells, ground substance, and also different fibers. And they're just modification of that. Um, so we're done with all these things. And then we move into the classification. There were 2 key classifications. One, that you can have it in the embryonic connective tissue, yeah, that is fine in the fetuses. And we also have a lot of mature connective tissue that I show you 13 examples. Yeah, here we talk about 2 types, and here we talk about 13 types. So I hope that you had a lot of fun, or that you're happy that you finished all this long chapter. But if you have any doubt, let me know. Have a good day and bye.